Hello and welcome, or welcome back. Look at that pattern matching. Isn't that amazing? I only had 1 yard of this fabric. Anyway, in this video, I make this jacket from scratch. It's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfect jacket. I bought this tweed at the start of the pandemic from Etsy, and it took literally 4 months to get here. I bought it originally because it reminded me of Alessandro era Gucci. So it was sort of vintage store, thrift store. But now that I've been working with it, it really reminds me of this Victor and Rolf dress, that one there on the right. And it's such an amazing dress. I think it's like silk and it's all pleated down and everything, and it's very bling. It's so fabulous. If you don't know Victor and Rolf, they're Nordic and they call themselves fashion artists, and their collections are just magnificent. This is the ribbon and bows one, and it was amazing. They had a perfume with it as well. Some of them were practical, but some of them were just fabulous. And this was a few years ago now, this collection, and they just got all the surplus fabrics from like 10 years worth of collections, and they tore it up into shreds and they made tweeds out of it. And so if you know all their collections, you can see like, the buttons are from this one. Anyway, let's make this jacket. But yeah, Victor and Rolf, if you don't know them, go on Pinterest and just search, and their work is amazing. Anyway, so I started with the structural layer, because when you're pattern matching, you sort of make two jackets. You make the shell of the structural layer, and then you sort of drape the tweed over the top so that it all matches. Anyway, so first you have to get your netting and make the structural layer. So I cut out 2 sets of all the pieces because I'm going to do a lot of beading on it, so it needs to support a lot of weight. So instead of just doing 1 layer of netting, I cut out 2 sets. And so what you do first is, on the left are the 2 bits for those bits are all the front, and on the right here, those 3 bits there are the back. So we've got front left, front right, and then all 3 pieces of the back sewn together. So I just machine sewed them together, then pinned back the seam allowance. If you have the time, I strongly recommend that you just stitch the seam allowance back now, and it just makes everything a little bit easier. But this is like my 100th jacket, so I'm just going to pin it, but I strongly recommend you hand stitch it. Anyway, so once you've got your shell in front section and back section, then you can drape it over the tweed. It's called draping, but it sort of looks like pinning one set to the other set. So as you can see, I've got the 2 fronts. They're matching up perfectly, and then I've got the 2 backs, and I've got the bit at the bottom there is going to be the sleeves. So you have to make sure everything is lined up. So whether you want to do vertical stripes or horizontal stripes, the front, bottom of the front and the bottom of the back all have to be lined up the same way. So I eventually hand stitched, pinned the layers together and just sort of eased them in so that the shoulder blades and the bust at the front, they're all sort of you just have to do it really slowly, and then all the curves just sort of, because tweed is so loosely woven, you just sort of bend it to your will sort of thing. And once you've pinned it in the right place, then you slowly hand stitch everything into place. And as you're hand stitching, you sort of move it a millimetre, a tiny bit here, tiny bit there. And I'm not sure if you can see, but the curve of the bust, it takes up the shape, and because you're hand stitching it, not sort of ramming it under a machine, you can sort of choose where you place each stitch. So it does take a while, but once you hand stitch the layers together, they sort of fit each other like a glove. And now once I sew I'm just going to sew the shoulders together. I'm not going to sew the sides together yet, just the shoulders, because I'm trying something new. And so here we have the front two fronts and the back sewn together at the shoulders, machine sewed them. And once they're machine sewed, then I had to pin back the seam allowance and hand stitch that down, as you can see I've done here. And then now it's time the next step is usually I sew up the sides, but what I'm going to do, this is the last jacket I made, and yes, I finally beaded it. It's got 1,500 beads on it, but they're clear glass and you can't see them, so I'm thinking about adding another whole layer of beading in those aqua beads. But anyway, I'm getting distracted. The reason I'm showing you this jacket is you can sort of see those points in the middle of each front panel of front left and front right where the center front panel and the side front panel meet, and there's sort of a bump there. And yeah, so what I'm going to do is, instead of just putting like shoulder pads in or shoulder buffers in, strengthening the shoulders, I'm going to strengthen the whole of the front, and hopefully that will make it sit flat. So that is what I'm doing. So I've got bright orange so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to use 2 layers of this actually, because as I said, there's going to be a lot of beading on this. And also this bright orange is a little thinner than the black stuff, the black netting that I'm using. So I pinned that in place, trimmed it down so it's flush with the edges. I'm not going to trim down the neckline yet. It's stronger if I work on it this way. And now I just need to hand stitch some lines across here. So I'm going to do lines from shoulder to shoulder along the back, and then sort of the same at the front, and also do you can see where I've done the shoulders. I'm not really sure. I haven't done this before, so I was just like feeling my way. I'm doing this voiceover after I finished it, so this works really well. And the hand stitching around the shoulder bits was also good. So once I'd done all that hand stitching, it's time to just cut out the bits, the neck hole. But also what I do is I make the whole outer jacket first, then I bead it, then I make the lining and I hand stitch it in. So I effectively have to sew back the neckline. So I machine sewed a layer of netting on top of it, then cut it out just so I know how it's going to go, and I'll need that for later. So it's just going to make it easier to do the neckline. But anyway, I've cut that out and it's ready to go for later. But before I can do the neckline, I have to finish cutting out the jacket. So I cut out the sleeves, making sure that I could pattern match as close as possible. And I cut out the upper sleeve, the lower sleeve for each arm, as well as the 2 inner front panels. So that are made out of tweed. So then I had to stitch the backing fabric to the actual to the tweed, and then I pinned the sleeves together and they're ready to machine sew. And then I also pinned the lining to the jacket, the front center lining bits to the jacket. And once I machine sewed them, once again, I just pinned back the seam allowance on those are the sleeves on the right there, and I pinned back the seam allowance on between the front and the lining. So there we go, that's the lining there and that's the front. And now I've done one sleeve and I'm just finishing the other sleeve, and I just finished it. So when you turn out a sleeve, it's really complicated. You sort of hold the cuff in and scrunch it into your hand, and then slowly pull the whole thing through. It takes a long time to turn out a sleeve because they're slimline sleeves, but just be really patient. And if you're getting too frustrated, put it down, go away, come back again. So now the next thing I had to do was the neckline, and as you can see, I pinned that bit of black netting to the outside, and then I machine sewed them together, and then I clip the curve and I cut down the seam allowance by half. You can see the half on the left there. And I clip the curve, and now I'm just going to turn the whole thing inside out. It's kind of like having facing or bias binding, but not, because this isn't dressmaking, it's jacket making. And then, and then I sort of pinned it into place, and then I hand stitched this into place. And that way the neckline is sort of reinforced by having that extra layer there. So you can sort of see, and all the seams are inside that layer of netting. So here we go. I've got the whole of the bodice or torso of the jacket done. And this is it from the side. Pretty happy with this pattern matching, because I only bought 1 yard of fabric because I'm that stubborn. And yeah, so pretty happy with that. So now it is time to pin these sleeves on and turn it into a fully formed jacket. And I was sort of racing against the, trying to get the natural light here. So here we go. I've pinned the sleeves into place, and very carefully. You just do the bottom 2/3 first, and then you have to ease in that top third, which takes a while. And once you machine sew your sleeves in, you have to cut down the seam allowance only by half in the bottom third, and then you flip the seam allowance into the sleeve, and it helps support the sleeve and gives it that beautiful shape. You pin it into place, and then you stitch it from the outside. And once that's done, you turn the jacket inside out and you stitch it from the inside as well. And here we go. Ta-da! This is the jacket. It's ready to bead. And yeah, it looks very different. It's not as, you can't really see the teal ribbon as much now that the jacket is made. Like when the tweed was just flat, I feel like you could see it more. Anyway, these are the buttons beads that I put aside for this jacket. And so there's lots of different glass beads. I like the sort of pyramid shaped ones, and they're ones with the hand done flowers on them. And there's also those larger ones are plastic beads, so they won't be too ridiculously heavy. And I also have some novelty sequins in heart shapes, and there's also some squares. So yeah, I'm still pretty happy with this mix. That vanilla yellow, sort of lemony yellow colour is definitely more prominent now that the jacket is made up. But I like this mix. I'm happy with it. There's also a brick red. It's sort of a browny red colour. That's much more prominent now that the jacket is made up. And I feel like the teal is really scaled back. Or maybe I just thought it was more prominent than it is. But I think I'm happy with these beads. I don't know when I'm going to have time to add the beads, but I'm definitely still happy with them. Anyway, so here is the jacket. I'm quite happy with the pattern matching too. Only 1 yard of fabric. So good. I mean, it does take a lot of time to do the double, like make the shell of the structural layer first, then drape it with the tweed, and then, put it together in one section, one tiny part, the shoulders, and then add all the extra layer of lining. And I only had the real footage of the pattern matching. And here it is at the back. It was really hard to get it symmetrical because, as I said, I had such a small piece of fabric, but also it's kind of, the plaid is asymmetrical. It's not the same on either side of the thick stripe. But But yeah, I'm happy with the way that it turned out. When you have a really loud, really bold tweed, you're never quite sure what it's going to look like, especially if you're a smaller size. And like this is a cropped jacket and it's collarless, so there's not a whole lot of surface area. And you're like, oh, is it even going to look good, or is it just going to look a little clownish? But no, I really like the way it turned out. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. I think next episode is going to be on structural layer and netting, where to find it, why you make it, how it helps the jacket age better, that sort of thing. And then the one after that will be another jacket. So either the Egyptian fabric, which I love, the tie-dyed one, or sea foam. I think those are the ones I really, really want to get done this month. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you then.